looks like everybody is in, and it is 10:02. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, thank you so much for joining us today. This is the Lee Virtual Schools information session. I am Meredith Berry. I'm one of the school's assistant principals. And joining me today are a number of Lee Virtual School staff members, which is wonderful. And we will all kind of be chiming in and bouncing off of one another to provide you with the best information possible. So I'm going to go ahead and allow Mr. Metzner to introduce himself, and then we'll move on down the line with a few other staff members.
Hello, I'm Eric Metzner, and I am the instructional technology specialist here at Lee Virtual. That means everything software related and the stuff that you're going to encounter on a daily basis, I can help out with. I can also help out with hardware, and we have an IT team here along with Mr. Kavanaugh who deals with our hardware. So we're so excited that you're here. This is amazing. Thank you for being here.
Mrs. McMillan, would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning, everybody. I'm Miss McMillan. I am principal here at Lee Virtual School. So I'm so excited that you joined us today, and we look forward to sharing what a virtual education looks like for you and your family, because I personally feel a virtual education is a family affair. So we're very excited that you're here to learn more today. Thank you for being here.
And we've got one of our fantastic instructors, Mrs. Guzman. Take a moment, introduce yourself too, please.
Good morning. My name is Tiara Guzman. I teach 11th grade U.S. history. This is my 4th year teaching at Lee Virtual, and I'm excited that you guys are here.
Thank you, Mrs. Guzman, for joining us. You bring a perspective to share with families that I don't necessarily have. Your boots on the ground look a little different than mine. So I really do appreciate you being here and looking forward to your thoughts and your recommendations and encouragements for families today. All right. Now, families, we know that you have some questions that are hot and heavy on your head that you absolutely want to get answers to. And we want to make sure that during our presentation today, we can settle in and really allow you to be present. So before Mr. Metzner and the team and I all get started, we're going to give you a second to ask questions, unmute yourself, write questions in the chat box. Let's get some of those topics that are in your mind. Let's get those out so that we can address, and then that way you'll be able to hopefully settle in and be present. So is there anyone who wants to unmute or write in the chat box something that is just hot and heavy they got to know? See, a few people are typing. And there's no silly questions. We've been doing this for a long time. There's no silly questions. So take a risk and ask.
Good morning.
Hi, Ms. Calhoun. Hello.
Hi, how are you all?
Thanks for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, it's not a question, it's a comment to all the staff, all the teachers, all the assistants, everyone who works in the Lee Virtual School system. You all are amazing. To the new parents that are coming in, I would like you to know that I have experienced pretty much every person in the building.
Yeah.
And they are always polite. They help you when you call and reach out. Never wait to the last minute, because they do have a heavy caseload and they do have a lot of kids that they're teaching. I'm just one of those parents that's always involved with everything. And they have been amazing. We have been in Lee Virtual since the pandemic. So that should tell you how long we've been here. And I have nothing but great reviews for all of the teachers. So that's all I wanted to say for right now.
I do appreciate you being here. That parent perspective, you can, again, you can speak a different boots on the ground perspective that I don't have. So it'll be great to have you chime in as well with your experiences. We've already got some great questions in the chat box, and these are all questions that we're typing responses to, and we're also will address throughout the presentation. So you're thinking what we're thinking. So far we're getting along well. Anyone else want to unmute and ask a question or take that risk, type something in the chat box so we make sure that we can get those answered and ease your mind. Classes starting and Chromebooks. Okay. Yep. That's always a hot topic. So we'll definitely talk about schedules and Chromebooks. Somebody else inquired about National Honor Society, National Junior Honor Society. Absolutely. Yep. We'll talk about that too. Good questions. Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep those questions coming, and we'll be fielding those. I am going to share my screen. Right. So today is an information session. We want to highlight the major points of Lee Virtual, really give you that overarching look, almost like the umbrella look at what Lee Virtual is in terms of as a public school, give you some better information, ensuring that you make the right decision that's best for your student. Obviously, you're all here because you're looking at what your enrollment options are for students, and whether it's a brick and mortar setting, whether it's a charter school setting, whether it's a homeschool setting, whether it's us, Lee Virtual setting, each of those settings provide an educational environment that differs. And the more information you have, the better decisions you can make. So let's start our presentation this morning with really talking about what is Lee Virtual School? What are we? And then also, what are we not? Because most of the time, that's where the confusion lies, is what exactly is Lee Virtual School and what isn't it? So I'm sharing my screen right now, and you're welcome to use your phone and take pictures whenever you want of our screens. But you'll see that Lee Virtual School, we are a public school. And as Mrs. Calhoun already mentioned, we are a kindergarten through 12th grade school. She commented on her students been with us for a number of years now, moving from elementary and through middle school and then transitioning next year into high school. So we are a K through 12 school, public school. And as a result of being a public school, we follow all of the rules and the guidelines for the district as well as the state of Florida. And we'll get into a little bit more of what are those rules, especially when it comes to things like National Honor Society, National Junior Honor Society, Chromebooks, state testing, things of those nature. Because we are a public school in Lee County, of course, student enrollment, they process all of our enrollments, just as if you were going to Lexington Middle or you were going to Ida Baker High School or Bayshore Elementary, you would go to student enrollment to submit your registration. Well, it's the same for us. So any student who registers with us, they've worked alongside with student enrollment for all of those registration documents. We are a franchise of Florida Virtual. So as a virtual school, we use curriculum that's been created by Florida Virtual. And I will, in just a little bit, actually show you what those classes look like. And you'll be able to, and your student will be able to see how the lessons are organized, how to submit those assignments, what the assignments look like. So we're a franchise of Florida Virtual. All of our content comes from them. It's important you know that, because a few years ago, when we were doing Lee Home Connect through the COVID years, the pandemic years, Lee Home Connect utilized Google Classroom, and many brick and mortar schools, even to this day, utilize Google Classroom. We want you and your student to understand we are not Google Classroom. We are not Google Classroom at all, which is why in a little bit, I'm going to show you what the lessons look like, so you can really get that idea of what that layer of rigor is within our courses. And I think that will get most of you excited about transitioning to Lee Virtual. Also, as a public school, we are utilizing Chromebooks. Again, just like if you were at Diplomat Middle or you were at Fort Myers High School, they're going to give you a Chromebook. Well, it's the same for us. And I'm going to go ahead and pause here and let Mr. Metzner talk a little bit about those Chromebooks.
So the Chromebooks themselves, each school is responsible for their inventory of Chromebooks. We do issue Chromebooks as a public school. We do ask that if you're coming from a brick and mortar setting, that you please return that Chromebook to that school because it's assigned to them as well. And then we will provide you with the Chromebook to use. Now, the Chromebooks are set up automatically with all the applications that you're going to need to be successful. So there's really not anything else that you would need per se. So make sure that you do take those Chromebooks back to your previous school and then make sure you come to see us. Right now, our tentative setup for Chromebook pickup is set for the beginning of August, but we'll get those dates out to everybody well beforehand so that you'll be prepared for the beginning of school.
Thank you, Mr. Metzner. So, yep, now you know there's the answer to one of the questions is about Chromebooks. So, yep, because we're a public school, all of our students, kindergarten through 12th grade, all receive a Chromebook and are required to use that Chromebook. And as Mr. Metzner alluded, there could be times when you might use your own monitor, or maybe you want to connect that to a printer. But the requirement of using our Chromebook, absolutely. And when we jump into those courses, I think you'll understand why you want to use your Chromebook versus your own personal device. Next up, for what we are as a public school, all of our students take part in district assessments and state assessments. So again, just as if you were at Orange River Elementary or you were at Bonita Springs High School or Bonita Middle for that matter, your student would be doing things like STAR testing or iReady testing, and of course, progress monitoring, the PM1, the PM2, the PM3, the FAST testing, all of those assessments that happen at the brick and mortar setting. Well, we're a public school, so our students do those too. Some of those tests they do at home in the privacy of your own home on the Chromebook through a Zoom. And some of those tests are done in person. So there are times throughout the school year when we do look forward to students coming onto our campus to take part in their assessments. And I think Mrs. Calhoun would agree, when her son came in, she was met in the parking lot by the staff. We were all wearing our brightly colored vests. We were dancing, we were cheering, super excited to see our students coming in. They came into the building, they were escorted into their particular room where they were sat and they did their assessments by their teachers. And we just really tried to make it a very calm experience. We know a lot of our students come in with some of those layers of testing anxiety, and there's no need for all of that with us. We want you to come on in. We're just excited to see all of our students. So you come on in and we treat our kiddos kindly and compassionately when they're here, encouraging them to do their best. That's all we ask, is that you do your best. But I do need our audience to understand that as a public school, those district assessments, those state assessments, those are non-negotiables, just as you were if you were in a brick and mortar. Mrs. Calhoun, did you want to say anything about your students' experience with those assessments?
I actually would like to chime in. And to the parents, I just want to say this. she's speaking it to you in school terms. When I speak with you, I will speak to you in parent terms, because I'm a parent that has been through it, went through it. And at first, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to be just as transparent as possible. At first, everything seemed hectic and a lot. But then I reached out to staff, and they made it so simple for me. With the testing, it was a breeze for my son, and he's not a good test taker. Like in that environment, he gets the anxiety and stuff like that. And he went in, when I saw him going in, I talked with him before, and he went in, and he felt good. So remind your children, it's just testing, make sure they get enough sleep is very important. Make sure they eat good breakfast before they go, and just trust that everything is good. But it was great. So, and farther along as Mrs. Berry goes on, I will probably chime in and address the parents. So if you all don't mind.
Yep, that's why we want you here. Absolutely. So also, as a public school, we issue high school diplomas. Absolutely, we do. Our graduation ceremonies over the years have taken place in different locations. We've had graduation ceremony at the old Harborside Event Center. We've had them at Florida Southwestern State College Arena. We've had them at the new Calusa Sound Convention Center. Oh gosh, at one point we held graduation at the Cape Coral Yacht Club. We've been in all sorts of locations, but the point is that yes, we issue high school diplomas, and yes, we have formal graduation ceremonies, caps and gowns. It is a time to honor our seniors walking across that stage, and we do that. We have a school board member that's there and present. We read each name as that student walks through across that stage. We're shaking hands, we're cheering those kids on. So yes, all of our students are ultimately working towards receiving that high school diploma and that formal, fun, very fun graduation ceremony. And then also, as a Lee Virtual School student, as a public school, we want parent involvement. Mrs. Calhoun's with us today. She's giving it to you straight. I love, again, you're getting her perspective, speaking a language that I don't speak. So we want our parents to be involved. We want you to be the learning guides. Our teachers are going to be calling you on a very regular basis. You have the ability to call your students' teachers whenever you want. We are very upfront about phone numbers. We share those. They're all over our teachers' announcement pages. So that parent involvement piece is really the heart of Lee Virtual School. It's that connection in terms of making our students be able to be engaged and be present and cross that finish line. So that parent involvement. Now, when we talk about elementary school, that learning guide is utmost important. When you're looking at a kindergarten, a first grader, a second grader, that student needs that adult to be present and with them in the home setting while they're engaged in their courses. But I would also venture to say that our middle school and high school students need that too. They're learning how to be organized. They're learning how to keep track. They're learning how to have very meaningful conversations through the phone and through texting. And the more we can include the parent in that and be more of a community to raise our students, the better. So there is definitely a large piece of Lee Virtual is parent involvement and parent engagement. Absolutely. Go ahead.
To the parents, I do encourage you to always communicate with your teachers, always. No matter the situation, no matter how small, they open the doors where you can text them. Sometimes they're doing DBAs, which I'm pretty sure it will be explained later on what DBAs are. They do have a certain window that they can contact you back. So, I mean, with that saying, always know where your kid is in classes. Know that the assignments are done. It doesn't take maybe like even 5 minutes to make sure that they're completing the assignments. You do not, and I'm gonna stress this, and I'm probably gonna say this a billion times because we have been through it. You do not want to get behind. Being behind is terrible. Leave virtual is great. It's no reason to get behind. Of course, we have disasters. Of course, we have family issues. But if you communicate these things with your teachers, they will actively work with you and set you up where you could get this work done where your kid is not behind. At the end of the school year, is so many children that are lagging and have like a certain amount of time to complete all this work. And then it's too much. So I'm gonna leave it there and then you go for it and then we'll talk.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That the role of the parent is vital for our students to be able to move forward. And I love that you mentioned the not getting behind pace. Again, when you're talking about elementary and middle school, and even to an extent, high school students, they are normally not naturally organized. That's a skill that we learn over time. We learn that through experience. So having that adult, that parent as that learning guide, always helping, going back in, doing that quick 5-minute check. You're right. It takes 5 minutes. That's it. Hopping on, every night, every other night. Let's take a look at the pace chart. Let's take a look at your grade book. Let's see where you're at. Let's do that quick check. That's what we need from our parents for sure. And I also love that you mentioned, yes, disasters happen. Yes, family events take place. Yes, things occur. That layer of communication then with the parent, the student, and Leave Virtual teachers is vital, because that work, it doesn't go away. It still has to get completed, but you just might have to communicate that with the instructor to be able to know it's going to get done. It just might be done in a little different, maybe outside of the parameters. Maybe it's done on Saturday. Maybe we have to just take this one day to step outside the box and finish up real quick. Because again, it doesn't go away. We don't have the ability to exempt it. It's got to be done. So that communication piece is so strong in making sure the students organize, stays on top of things, and that the teachers always know what's going on so that they can then pivot as they might need to as well. And then just take a look real quick that what we are not home education. So we've got some families who enroll with us and they'll reference us as home education because of course their student spends most of their time at home. And I am quick to tell them, no, we're not home education. We are Leave Virtual Public School and your student happens to spend most of their time at home. But as you can see, for students who are formally enrolled in home education, the expectations and the parameters greatly differ from us as Leave Virtual School. So I would caution everyone on this call today that should you continue with the enrollment with Leave Virtual, that you in your vocabulary always reference us as a public school and falling under those parameters. Whereas if you're a homeschool, you're not getting a diploma, you're not getting any of the curriculum, and you're definitely not getting any of the Chromebooks or any of the district assessments either. Team, before I move on, is there anything else that anyone wants to share about Leave Virtual as a public school? Okay, then we'll move right along here. So this is just a real quick snapshot here. We're not going to belabor the point too much because really our nuts and bolts is going to get into the lessons so that you can see what the courses look like. That's really the meat of info session, is for you to see it. But I do want our families to understand the rigor that's involved with this. And Mrs. Calhoun, she already kind of mentioned this a bit in terms of the amount of work that students do with us. So please just take a moment and notice if your student's an elementary student, they'll be enrolled in 4 courses. If your student is in middle school or high school, they will be enrolled in 6 courses. You can see the number of assignments per week that traditionally students complete or submit. Elementary kiddos are somewhere around that 8 to 10 mark. So that's averaging about 2 assignments per course per week. That's reasonable. Our middle school and high school, because you have 6 courses, you're somewhere around a dozen or more. Again, if you've got 6 classes, you can anticipate at least 2 assignments due per course per week. Now, it does ebb and flow. And in a little bit, Mrs. Guzman, I'm sure will talk about that when we get in and look at the courses, and we're actually talking about the pace charts. She'll, as a teacher, she'll be able to really start to break that down as to how that looks. But I put this on the screen because I want our families to understand that as a public school, you can anticipate being online for a traditional school day. That schedule is just going to look very unique and different. Go ahead, Mrs. Calhoun.
Okay, parents, I'm chiming in again. Although when you see on this screen, it does look like a lot of hours. It does look like a lot of assignments. The key to all of this is to be organized. If your child has 6 courses, get a folder for every course. Allot the amount of time that they spend. They should be spending an hour on each course. If they don't get it at first in that hour, please tell them to move to the next course, because you have to show that you're in doing your work. You have to show that you're active in these classes. Far as like the I read it, that's stuff that now I'm just going to tell you, you don't know what I read it is right now, but that's a reading course that that all the children, I think, that have to take it. And now my son, when he took iReady, the iReady, according to the teacher now, because one year we had one teacher and she said that he could do all of his minutes in iReady on Monday, or you could split them up every day. It's up to you, and or whatever the instructor says to you. But organization is the key. You need to be organized. I mean, it's not hard. I get 6 folders and I write on each folder what class it is for him. So when he's doing math, he knows, okay, if I say, well, okay, you have something to do with math today, you need to work on that. He pulls math folder and he works that folder. So make it easier on yourself, you know. Okay.
Yep, she's exactly right. Because of being in this online setting, you're still going to want to get paper and folders for every course. You're still going to want to have pens and pencils and highlighters. Your student's going to be taking notes. Your student's going to have to, especially in math, they're going to have to be working out problems. At the elementary level, you're going to need some scissors and you're going to need glue, for example. So just because you're staying and spending most of your time in the home setting, you're still a public school student. And all of the techniques that you would use if you were in an actual school setting, you're just using in the home setting. And so in a couple of moments, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Metzner, and he's going to talk a little bit about what that looks like in the home setting. Obviously, that's where I'm also going to seek some guidance from Mrs. Guzman and back to Mrs. Calhoun, so that everybody can understand that in the home setting, when your student is doing 6 to 7 hours online, juggling 8, 12 assignments, 4, 6 classes, it's all going to look different depending upon your home environment. But the thing that's the same is that space. Everybody's got to have a designated space. Your space might look different. but everybody's got to have that space. And I want you as our audience to hear which each person's space looks a little bit like. So Mrs. Calhoun,
Right.
I'll start
So-
with you a little bit.
I just wanted to add in this, and I'm sorry, Ms. Guzman, if I interrupted you. Far as the space wise, I can absolutely tell you, you do not want your kids in their bedroom. Bad, bad. Do not. I don't care if you have that set up, move it, because the bed is right there and they're constantly thinking, oh, I can get in the bed. I have seen on Zooms kids that are in their room laying in the bed as a Zoom is going on. No, that's not the way school works. If you're in school, you need to be present. You need to be alert. You're missing too many things. There's too many things going on. They're saying a lot of stuff. They need to be taking notes. They need to be in a designated area. So that's what I wanted to chime in about the space. It's very important. You can even do it outside. I mean, if you have a little lanai or a patio or even a special place out there, it's beautiful outside. Let them learn that way. You can do it in your dining room or your living room or anywhere but the bedroom. No.
Thank
no
you, Miss
bedroom.
Calhoun. We needed that. We were just having that exact conversation behind the scenes here.
No, ma'am, no bedroom. So if hi kids, if listen, no bedroom. The best place is outside of the bedroom because we associate the bedroom with sleep, relaxation. I mean, you know, you're not associating the bedroom with work and getting it done. So guess what? You might start an assignment and say, oh, I get to it later and go lay down. No, it's never going to get done. So that's a tip for you all.
Brilliant. Just we were clapping when we heard that. Brilliant. We strongly recommend that there's a set space for school so that when the student enters that space, whether it be a desk or what have you, they are at school. That's what they're there for. They associate that space with school. They get the work done in a much more successful manner, believe it or not. And she's absolutely right. There's an association with the bedroom of being a place to sleep, a place to play, a place to hang out with friends or socialize, or social media. It's different. So giving yourself that space is so important, and occupy that space, put things there that you're going to need. Use the pens and pencils, the notebooks, the paper clips, the highlighters, the things that you would normally use for school should be right there for you as well. And one thing that Ms. Berry has talked about many times is that put some posters up, put some things up that would mimic what the classroom setting would be. Because most of the classrooms do allow teachers to put up posters and things that actually teach as well. So there's things like that can help you in your environment, make your environment school so that you know when you step into there, that's what you're there for.
Mrs. Guzman, do you have any thoughts to share?
Yes, I'll just piggyback off what Mrs. Calhoun said, is that, you know, the bedroom is just not the place. It's not conducive for learning. And the same goes for us as teachers. We all have a designated workspace that is a desk, and I have my supplies here. I have Post-it notes. I have a huge desk calendar, so I know when I have appointments with students, or I have a list of who I need to call that week. And one thing you'll find, and I know this sounds a little odd now, but you'll understand once you're in it, is that you really have more access to us as teachers than the teachers in the brick and mortar. I can remember, it's been many years since I taught in the classroom, but I can remember thinking that I really didn't know my students' parents, and I didn't know my students as well because they're coming in throughout the day. We're changing classes 6 times a day, but it's not that way here. So I have 110 students this year, and I really know them all on a first name basis. I know what sports they play. I know what their parents do and what's going on with their family, because that communication is constant and it's two-way, and we open it up. Students will share a lot more usually with us virtually, just because there's not that, you know, barrier of in-person anxiety. And so I would just say, you know, find your workspace, have your supplies. You still do need school supplies in this environment, even though they may not be the same supplies you would use. Most of them really, you know, are, but you really need to stay organized with your supplies and have a dedicated workspace.
And I love that you mentioned the calendar. So whether it's a desk calendar, whether it's an individual calendar, whether it's a planner, Mrs. Guzman, she's so right about that. There's a lot of time when your students are scheduling appointments and they need to have that ability to write down on a calendar what day and what time. You know, you're talking about juggling multiple teachers and multiple conversations, and you'll see in a few minutes when we get into the discussion about discussion-based assessments, our students are on the phone talking with their teachers a lot. And we are very candid about that, because that is an absolute requirement in our school, is that our students are talking with their teachers. And I'm compassionate for our families who are struggling with some social anxiety. Maybe their students struggle to have conversations. Please know that in our school, Lee Virtual, as a public school, the student-teacher conversations is a non-negotiable. Now, you're more than welcome to put us on speakerphone. Absolutely. You can have us on speaker so that the parent in the background can hear the whole conversation. But the conversation has to be driven between the student and the teacher. I'll have parents that will call me and they'll say, oh, hi, Meredith Berry. You know, I am Mr. Smith and my son, John, is wondering about, and I'll say, oh, Mr. Smith, thank you for calling. Either put John on the phone or put me on speaker. But either way, I need to hear John's voice. I need to talk with John. And we know that it can feel really odd, really weird and uncomfortable at first to talk on the phone with your teacher. But like Mrs. Guzman said, she's been doing this for years. Once you have that one conversation, it gets easier to have the next. And then it gets easier to have the next. And before you know it, like Mrs. Guzman said, you know the sports that your students are playing, you know the games that they're into. We hear your dogs barking in the background. You hear our little ones running around in the background. Before you know it, all of that just becomes part of our relationship that we have. But I am very candid about, it is non-negotiable that it's a student-teacher conversation. Again, put us on speakerphone, that's fine, but we've got to hear that student communicate. All right, go ahead, Mrs. Calhoun, and then I'm going to move on.
Okay, to Ms. Guzman, good to see you. Good to hear from you. Haven't seen you in a while. Just like she said, as and I can say for my son, even with math, he was struggling at one point. Mrs. Guzman took the extra time to work with him until he understood the assignment. Sometimes your kids will read these assignments, they will go over them, you will go over them with them, you will not understand. But if you build a rapport with your teacher, I can't stress this enough. Every teacher that we have encountered, I have built a rapport with them. I ask them how their day is going, because they are human. Always remember, they are human. They have good days, they have bad days. But I tell them I appreciate them. Anything you need, call me. If I can do it, let's do it. My life is a service. So, and that's to the parents also. I don't know if they'll let me, and I will talk more, me and Mrs. Bear, we'll talk more if I can help the parents getting into the setting when it's first in school so they can understand Chromebooks and stuff like that. I don't mind helping you. What I want you to understand, never be afraid to ask the questions. No question is a bad question. The only bad question is the one that you don't ask. Your children will suffer for you not asking those questions. Get over your fear. These are people here to help you. I can absolutely say that. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So as we're about to jump into courses then, I think we can all agree that Lee Virtual School, this is an online environment. It's also known as asynchronous. So you're not logging into Google Classroom. We all understand now this is not Zooming for 7 hours of the day. This is students logging into work. They're essentially self-teaching, and there's that heavy partnership with the teacher for that layer of support and content mastery. Most of our assignments are written and writing based. Pace charts, we're going to show you what those look like. That's all that organizational tool that Mrs. Calhoun already mentioned. And of course, the discussion-based assessments. That's that piece of it where the students are always communicating with their teachers. So team, give me just a moment. I'm going to jump into my virtual account. I'm going to stop sharing. And I'll go ahead and allow my team to chime in, given any information they might want to give while I jump into my account.
I will say, as a former classroom teacher, coming over to Lee Virtual School and seeing the virtual teachers work, the amount of one-to-one instruction and support is vastly better than that in a classroom setting, vastly better. And this is my 4th year with Lee Virtual. It's amazing to see how the interaction goes with the students, with the parents. It's just one, I could say big happy family, but it comes down to everyone's there to make sure that that student gets what they need to be successful. And it really does pan out that way.
It does. And one thing I was thinking when I first logged in and I saw Miss Calhoun, I was like, Steve, and he did martial arts and I taught him in 7th grade. And when Miss Berry said he was going to high school, like it's just that connection that you make with families that carries on through. A lot of our teachers have looped up. So I was in middle school a couple of years ago. Now I'm teaching high school. So those same students are now cycling up to me. And it's a very different experience relationship wise, because I just feel like I know so much more about the students and families, and that helps me to be able to help them. You know, how can I encourage you to let's get this work done? How can I encourage you to finish? How can I encourage you, to do your best?
Perfect. That's beautiful. We want to know the why behind why a student is doing so well. Why are you doing well? What is it? What's working well for you? But we want to know the why behind if a student's not doing well. Why aren't you doing well? What can we do? What tips and strategies can we provide for you? The only way we know that is that constant communication, that rapport. All right. So we are a franchise of Florida Virtual. This is the website with which our students use to access the majority of their courses. So at some point, if you continue on with your enrollment with Lee Virtual School, the next step is to do something called orientation. Orientation is an in-person event. And so after we get done meeting today, I will do a follow-up email to you, inviting you to orientation. And there's a number of orientations during the month of June and July. You and your family pick the one that's best for you. You'll come into the Lee County Public Education office, and we will help you create your virtual account. So this isn't something that you would do by yourself. Again, we want to provide you with that layer of support and guidance. But for purposes of today, I'm going to go ahead and log into my account. And I am going to pull up our test student. So when your student logs into their account, of course, it will have their name at the top corner, and they land on their student dashboard. And when they scroll down, they see all of the courses that they're enrolled in. Now again, elementary kiddos, you're enrolled in 4: math, science, social studies, and language arts. 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students, you're enrolled in 6. Again, math, science, social studies, language arts. As Mrs. Calhoun said, iReady is that's one of our electives. And then the other elective. 6th graders, it's peer counseling. 7th graders, it's critical thinking. And then 8th graders, you have a choice. When you come in for orientation, that is when you will pick your schedule. High school students, you also have 6 courses. Now, it gets a little fuzzy with exactly what that's going to be. You know, it's definitely going to be an English class, a math class, could be a science, could be a social studies, couple of electives. That's, again, at orientation is where you pick your courses. And everything is being selected according to the high school graduation guidelines. My point is that all 6 of those courses are going to be found on this dashboard. And you just simply go into the course that you want to start working in. So I think for our purposes right now, I'm going to jump into, how about high school US history? How about that, Mrs. Guzman? Okay, so we're going to jump into high school US history. It says you're in, so I'm going to hit the course button. And the first thing that we see is our teacher's announcement page. And Mrs. Guzman, I'll let you talk about the announcement pages and the value of them.
Okay, so the announcement page is kind of like my business card, right? So you're going to get my phone number, the email address, all the things that are pertinent for that week are going to go in that white box in the middle. So I'm going to change that weekly to say, you know, upcoming tests, make sure you schedule your DBA, or we have some state testing on this day, make sure you report, or we're going to have a Zoom meeting. And I'm going to have all of the things that are constantly changing are going to change in that white box. Most of the other things are going to remain the same. And over on the left-hand side where the pace charts are located, that to me is the most important resource for success besides my phone number, because it's going to tell you when to do what. And that if you stick with that, you will be incredibly successful. It's when we get behind pace, when things start to get rough. But all of the resources that we provide, those say coming soon, but I'll tell you from experience, the ones that we provide would be like extra videos that we make for students. I use a lot of templates for my assignments, because if I want you to write, you know, 5 paragraphs about something, I'm going to give you 5 boxes so that it's very clear exactly what we want you to do for the assignment. We are always here to help. That's the thing that I can't stress enough, is keep those lines of communication open. Make sure you check this. This changes weekly, usually towards either the end of the week or the beginning of the week, but that changes weekly on what we need you to know. And just don't be afraid to reach out. We are here, like Ms. Calhoun said, the only bad question is the one you didn't ask. And we spend a lot of time in the beginning of the year with our students, really familiarizing them with what the process is. So they will have, you know, the first days with us, but you can always come here for, you know, everything. This is like our digital classroom and like a business card in one.
Yeah, and please understand that because we are in summer, our teachers, many of them aren't working right now. They're off, just like the brick and mortar school teachers. So these announcement pages say coming soon because our teachers are spending their summer updating with resources. They're updating their pace charts, but I'll find a course where there is a pace chart to show you one that you can see it. Mrs. Guzman, will you talk a little bit about the DBAs and the Zooms, like live lessons, office hours kinds of topics?
Sure. So we'll start with DBAs. DBA stands for discussion-based assessment. There is at least one in every single course, and in US history, there are 4, one for each module, and those are non-negotiables. It is a phone or Zoom conversation with the teacher and student, and it really is a discussion. This is not something where it's a gotcha. I'm not looking to, you know, trap you to see, like, did you read every word of the module? This is a chance for me to assess you as a student to see, did you understand what you read? Did you understand what you went through? And let's talk about it. What did you find interesting about the module? What did you find challenging about the module? Usually they last between 10 and I've seen some last 20 minutes, but usually 10 to 15 minutes, usually 3 to 5 questions about the content. And it's really an opportunity for the teacher to make sure that you are ready to take the assessment for that module. So it's a checkpoint. It's to make sure that you're doing your own work and that you understand it. And if there's not really a failing of the DBA, because if I feel that for some reason you're not ready to take the exam, I'll say, hey, let's just reschedule this. And while we do that, go complete the DBA study guide, go complete some more notes, go back and read about World War II, because I don't think you have a clear understanding of that. So there's never like a failed or a gotcha or a hard zero. It's more of either you pass and you get the password to take the exam, or I need you to go back and try again. That's one thing at Lee Virtual, you get multiple tries at the assignments. And there's a lot of time for
I
reflection.
just wanted to add, can you all hear me?
Keep going, Mrs. Guzman.
Yes, so there's a lot of time for reflection and, editing of your assignments to get a higher grade. So as she's showing you there in the grade book, the DBA always comes at the end of a module before an exam. And those exams are password protected, so you cannot take them without completing the DBA. And as she's in the grade book, this is a good time to say you must work in order. It's sequential. So 100, 101, 102, you must work in order. That is so incredibly important for you to be successful, is to work in order. And the next thing was the Zooms. So teachers are not on Zoom all day, every day, but we have a couple of different ways that we reach students on Zoom. One is a office hour, help hour. And so those will be posted once the teacher decides, those are going to be, let's say, Thursdays from 10 to 11. The information will be posted on the announcement page. And that's just a time where if you have a question about how to do an assignment, if you want to know more information about, why did the United States decide to get involved in World War II, you can hop in and you can ask me those things and we can talk that out during the office hour or help hour. The other time that we Zoom in the 11th grade, we were doing once a month a lunch and learn, where we were presenting topics to 11th grade students that would be relevant to them. So in 11th grade, topics that are relevant are ACT, SAT prep, technical college, regular college entrance. We had some representatives from FGCU, from Fort Myers Tech come, and we really just wanted to present some non-academic information that was important to all 11th graders. And this is a good time to bring up that your teachers all work together. So we might teach in isolation at our house, but we meet together once a week, and we meet together for 2 weeks in person at the beginning of the year to plan how that's going to look each week. But your teachers work together. So I'm part of the 11th grade team. I'm the history teacher. I work with the 11th grade math teacher. I work with the 11th grade English teacher, and I work with the 11th grade science teacher, so that we can better serve you, so that we can talk and say, you know what, these are the students that are really ahead of pace, and what can we do to help them? And these are the students who are struggling, and what can we do to help them? So we don't teach in isolation, and we all, we're all on the same page in that regard.
Thank you, Mrs. Guzman. So I'm just going to jump back over to the grade book, and then we're going to go into the lessons, because you did mention a couple of things. The grade book is where your student will submit all of their work. Now, you're probably used to Focus, and we will post our final grades in Focus. But as a Lee Virtual School student, parents and students, everything gets turned in the grade book. So this is where that quick 5-minute check that Mrs. Calhoun mentioned, she's talking about right here. You take a look at the assignment, and it tells you the exact day and time the assignment was submitted. So in our world, we don't ever say, did you turn work in? Do you have work to do? We say, show me. So parents, you want to, in your quick 5-minute check at the end of the day, you want to say, open up your course pace chart so we can see what's due this week, and then open up your grade book and show me what you've got turned in, because everything is always day and time stamped. And you might see an immediate grade, or you might see where it's been turned in, but maybe it's an essay and the teachers have 48 hours to grade that. So it might be that you can see that it got turned in, but you're just waiting for your students' feedback. Everything gets turned in here. And as Mrs. Guzman said, you work in order. and you'll notice that the pace chart is aligned with the grade book. So these are where our assignments get turned in. And obviously right here is where we find our lessons. Oh, if I click on lessons, we're working in order. So this happens to be US history. We start with the first. So in module 1, there are 9 lessons to cover. So students would be starting with the first. They're going to see all of their resources here, maybe use their notes that are given to them. They're going to read the page, do whatever the activities are on the page, and they move to the next. This lesson happens to be a total of 6 pages. So this could be a lesson that maybe a student does 3 of the pages on Monday, and maybe on Tuesday, they do the other 3. Or maybe you have the ability to do 3 pages or 2 pages in the morning, you take a break, and then maybe you come back to it later on in the day. But chances are a student would not sit and read all 6 pages and try to digest all of that information in one setting. That's where that unique schedule comes into play. Just a second, Ms. Calhoun, I'll let you jump in. So you just go on to the next. You're reading your pages, you're doing the activities, you're taking the notes, you're taking your own notes, and you're moving on through. And you have the ability to always go back if you need it. You can keep going forward. And when you get to the end, this is where you find out what your assignment is. This is where you get that discussion of, is it an essay that you're writing? And here's the topic, here's the rubric. Is it some type of an organizational tool that you're creating? Is it a science lab that you're doing? Is it math problems? Your assignment is always explained at the very end. And then you go into your grade book, and this is where you turn it in. Go ahead, Mrs. Calhoun.
To the parents, I would encourage you to, for each assignment, I would encourage you to look at the assignment from front to back so that you are aware of what is expected for your child. Like I said, it does not take more than 5 minutes for you to skim through, read through, just so you know what is expected. The rubric is the most important part of the lesson. And if you can, okay, so when you look at the rubric, this is the blueprint for what the teachers are grading your children off of. So if they say on that rubric, I need for you to put 6 lines of, oh, here it is right here. So if they tell you this is the grading system, excellent is A, good is like a B, needs improvement, C, D, poor is F. So if you go down this rubric, it allows you to understand how to help them. Okay, they are expected to read this and apply this. It looks like a lot, it really isn't. Some of it is punctuation, some of it is reading it and putting what you learned in there. Always remember, tell your children, do not copy. Plagiarism will get you kicked off the course, period. I mean, they'll give you a warning. They're really good about that. But all of that copying and pasting, no, do not. The rubric, that is a solid baseline for you. Also, the teachers will put videos in there for that. They usually attach it to the pace chart, where you can watch videos if you don't understand. I mean, it's expensive. They actually lay the law down. And as I learned when I was in school, if they can take the time to put it there for you, please take the time and read it. It's to help your kids. Your journey in Leave Virtual will go a lot smoother just by clicking tabs and reading it. reading it, or they even offer funny videos. I mean, this has been some hilarious videos. The Rick roll, I have seen so many Rick rolls till I'm used to Rick rolling. So, and I don't know if you all know, a lot of you parents do know what the Rick rolling videos are, but that is so important. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, she's absolutely right. You can't delete any of this, but you got to take a risk. You got to click around. You got to get nosy. So while Mrs. Guzman and the teachers want to help you, there's a layer of expectation that you're going to help yourself as well. And that's where that risk taking comes into play, where you're going to get in there and you're going to click around and get nosy. We want to help you, but we also want you to be able to know where to find the resources to help yourself. Because maybe you're working on an assignment at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday evening, but maybe Mrs. Guzman, maybe her day is over with at 7 o'clock and she's not available to take your call at that time. Well, we want to teach you how to teach yourself. So in the beginning of the school year in August, and the dates will come, there will be days where we will invite you all in to our campus. Again, we're the Lee County Public Education Center on Colonial Boulevard. Students will come in. We will teach you. We will teach you how to log into your courses. We will teach you where to find your resources. We will teach you how to find your lessons. We will teach you how to load your assignments. You will come in person, meet your teachers, and spend some time here with us where we're teaching you. We want to teach you. We'll send you home, let you work independently for a day or two or a weekend, and then we're going to bring you back. We want you to come on back so now we can debrief, talk about what went well, what didn't go well. And as Mrs. Calhoun said, taking a look at creating a class for parents as well, so that we can teach you too, so that you can also support your students. Mrs. Guzman, I see you wanted to say something. I'm going to jump to another class while you're talking. Is that okay?
Yes, I just wanted to say one thing like they both stressed is that using those resources is so important, because when you come to me for help and you say, Mrs. Guzman, I don't understand what we are supposed to do, the things I'm going to ask you is, did you read the last slide? Did you look at the template that I had on the page chart? Did you watch the video that I put on the page chart? Did you take notes? Because those are things that you have to do before I can help you. I have to know that you've hit all of those items in order for me to be able to say, okay, well, you've done everything on your part. So let's try to figure out where the point of confusion is and how can I clarify it.
Here is another announcement page. This happens to be 7th grade math. So if we have any middle school students on, this is what 7th grade math looks like. The announcement page looks the same. But I want to open up this page chart so that you can see what the page chart looks like. So now this page chart is set for our summer session. So we have summer session technically starting today, and it technically ends in mid-July. So you can see by Thursday, all of the lessons and assignments that students are working on. But this is your guide. And as Mrs. Calhoun said, you open this up, this becomes your guide to knowing what you're turning in, and you're working through all of those, and you always have your due date. And that's where the calendar comes into play. And that's where your family comes into play. You create that schedule in your home so that you know what times you're working in your courses. You work in every course every day. Every course every day. That's how we take attendance. That's how the human brain works. Your student needs to do a little bit in every course every single day. What time, you decide that. But we can see that any student who's taking this class during the summer, they are submitting multiple assignments every single week to get the whole thing done in 5 weeks. Yes. Oh, you're still muted, Ms. Calhoun.
Oh, I'm sorry. To the parents that are looking at this page chart here, she said, this is for the summer. Now, normally it's not that many assignments at all. So don't let that deter you. Don't let that scare you, because that's scaring me with seeing that many at one time a little bit, but that's for the summer, and that's a horse of a different color, because they have such a short amount of time to finish during the summer. But during the normal school year, you may see each teacher is different, each class is different. What has to be done in each class will be different. That's why it's important to go in each class every day, because the assignments that are due for Thursday, June 15th, as you see on, like, for the first week, there are 5 other classes or 6 other classes or however many other classes that you have that also have assignments due in the same week on I think it was Friday at 4 o'clock. So now, with that being said, with the 4 o'clock deadline, now mind you, it is important to be transparent with your teachers. If there's any reason that you cannot meet that 4 o'clock deadline, I encourage you to give them a call, give them a text message, reach out and inform them or let them know that it's something going on, because your child is expected to have this work in on Friday at 4 o'clock. I don't know if they'll change it, but that's what it was for us. That DBA is like gold. I print that DBA out, and as he finishes or completes the assignment and turns it in, I mark it off. Now, you have to keep in mind that sometimes these DBAs will change, because it's, hurricane season. I could tell you like this, they had to delete a lot of stuff or take a lot of stuff out, and then they had to add stuff in. So you don't want to just keep looking at this DBA that you printed off and not go onto the physical computer and look at it, because it does change. Some of them have links to them that will give you videos. Use the links. The videos are amazing. The stuff that my son did not know, he went in the links and it was beautiful. They explained piece by piece, and if he still didn't understand, those are the things that you need to put in your pocket when you get ready to talk to the teacher. Well, my son did the video. He got kind of stuck on this, and that's where they will direct and help you from there. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, she's absolutely right. This is great to print, because again, when you're learning how to be organized, to be able to cross something off of a list just really feels good. But you want to look at it every day as well, because of the live links that are available. So we then just hop over to the lessons, and this is where we jump in and we do our lessons. So again, this is 7th grade math. We'll go over to segment 2, probability. So our first page here gives us a breakdown of approximately how many minutes it's going to take to do the lessons. And we're going to move on. You'll see you've got all sorts of resources up here to use. And this is a math course. You're still reading. Math is reading. So if we have any students joining us today, please look closely at the screen so that you can see math is taught as a reading course. So you're reading, doing any of the activities, and this happens to be 6 pages in length. We move on. And we're going to read it through. We're going to take our notes. We're going to do any activity that's showing. We're reading. And we're moving on. Now we got some practice problems to work on here. So it gives you the ability to do some practice, and these are not graded. They're just simply practice. And we move on. But you can see even math is a reading-based course. Now, as Mrs. Guzman and Mrs. Calhoun have said, the teachers will provide additional resources. Maybe they'll do a link to Khan Academy. Maybe they'll actually make their own unique video to be able to explain it, to do other demonstrations. But a student must be reading And then they move on. Get some more practice problems here. There's 5 of them, and we move on. And then we come to the end, where we then get our assignment. And this one happens to be 4.01. So we would go to our grade book and we would submit right here. So whether it's a high school course, a middle school course, or even an elementary course, it all follows the same guideline. They're all reading based. Everything gets turned into the grade book. They all have a pace chart to follow. It all is going to require that verbal discussion with the teacher. Even our kindergartners talk to our kindergarten teacher. Our kindergartners are on the phone talking with their teacher about what they're learning. Even our kindergartners do it. So that's an absolute non-negotiable. And as you can see, that always comes before an exam. And those are password protected. See if I can jump into another one here. Let's take a look at an English course. Okay, here's another style of a pace chart where this tells you all of the work is due by June the 16th, and it gives you the lessons that are due by that date. Week number 2, which is due by June 23rd, and all of the lessons that are due. So everything is laid out in front of you. And then you access the lessons the same. This one happens to be 5 pages in length. And we're going to read our page. We're going to do whatever the activities are, take our notes. And we'll continue on through.
Principal Barry, can you
Yeah.
go back to where it shows semester 1 and semester 2?
Yes, I can. Yep. Right here. So segment 1 is technically
Yeah.
semester 1 content. Segment 2 is technically semester 2 content. Yep, right there.
What I wanted to add to the parents with that is, if your child is excelling and they are getting their DBAs done on time, their work, and some kids get bored easily. My son was a type of kid that get bored easily, so he was able to work ahead. They encourage you, if they have everything due, work ahead. You can work ahead. My son was finishing all of his other classes except with the exception of math, because that was a little harder subject for him, but he was basically done. Now, he didn't rush through it. He did not rush through any of it. It's just that his favorites and the ones that came naturally to him, he did those assignments. They do encourage that. If your child feel comfortable, go ahead, go for it. When my son first started, I can say this as a parent, I sat with him, and as he was reading, I was reading. I didn't do any assignments for him. I didn't help him with any assignments, but I wanted to know that he was clicking into everything and touching everything and seeing everything that he needed to see, so he can have the best knowledge. Because when you get to those DBAs, which is very important, if they don't read it, the teachers know they haven't read it. They know, because the questions are in the assignment. There's no such thing as skipping over anything. There's no such thing as, oh, I forgot to read that page, the dog ate it, whatever you want to say. It's none of that. So they can tell by the questions that they're asking if you have read the material. And it's nothing worse than having to redo a DBA. As a parent, I'm telling you, it's time, and to the teachers, it's time consuming. filming, number one. Number two, they have other students that have done the work and are ready to take the DVAs. And when your child isn't ready, that sets you back. So when you schedule those DVAs, be prepared. Know that your child is ready. Do the 5-minute check. Go back and look in and make sure. If you see they took a test and it's a 15, I think that you need to re-look over the materials. Very important. Re-go back through it. Send a teacher a text message. And if you need that advice, whether they should tell you, okay, listen, I think that you should talk to me here and let me see what your points are, what you need help on before you retake those tests, because you only have 3 attempts. So I just wanted to add that on that.
And when you're finished with one, a student just simply comes up here to my courses, and this is where they toggle between their others. Now, to Mrs. Calhoun's point, when a student is maybe skipping around, not submitting work in order, maybe they're copying and pasting, maybe they're caught plagiarizing, teachers reserve the right to lock a student out of their course. And that is what this looks like. So if a student ever logs into their course and this is what they come upon, that is the teacher's way of saying, please call me. Call me. There's something wrong. I need you to call me. We've got to talk about something. So we try to stop a student before they get too deep into maybe working out of order. And our way of preventing them from moving on is to lock them out. And that's when we want them to call us. So if there's something that's going on within their course and it's really a problem, we're going to put them in contact instructor status and lock them out of it. And on the dashboard, then that looks like, I'll visually show you what that looks like. That looks like this. So if a student ever logs into their dashboard and they see this, that means call the teacher ASAP. They got to talk about something. This is our way of trying to prevent anything further from happening. This is when we want to do some reteaching right here, right now. Okay. So as we wrap up for today, I want to go back to our audience and see from our audience, what outstanding questions do you have? And then let's talk about next steps as we continue through the enrollment process. So back to our audience. Unmute yourself. What questions do you have? Maybe type in the chat box.
I did want to say one thing about plagiarism. The easiest way to avoid plagiarism is to ask your child to write as if they're talking to their 5-year-old sibling. Like write it, explain like you're explaining it to a child. If I read about the US Constitution, okay, if I was sitting there with my 5-year-old kid, I would say, hey, you know, the Constitution was a great piece of a great article in our government. Say it, write it as you would say it to them. Don't take, okay, the US Constitution was written in 1860. You know, you have to put certain facts in 1867 or the US Constitution. But when it comes down to writing word for word, trust me, you will get flagged. They have when you turn it in, it is a turn in document where it goes to a database, and it can tell you the amount that was copied and pasted. They can see it. That's in every school in America, because in college they did it with us in college. So it's not abnormal to see that. So I can always encourage you. I tell my son all the time, did you write that on your own? I ask those questions because when you have to go back and you have to deal with all that locking out, and listen, that means you're putting yourself behind again, because you can't move until you talk to someone. You can't move anything. You can't stop anything. You can't until you talk to the right person. It's nothing can be done. And meanwhile, your child is getting behind. So you don't want that. And it's easy not to have plagiarism, but some children, and I'm just gonna say this on the platform, copy and paste everything. They just because they just think that they can get away with it, they just do it. But they do have a conversation with the children about this, and it's always a conversation about plagiarism. So, it's not saying your child will ever do it. They always still bring it up for you.
Are there any questions from the audience, in the right here, right now, that you're still curious about? So if you're still interested in Leave Virtual School, and maybe you have not yet submitted your application, make sure that you reach out to student enrollment. And again, student enrollment processes all of our registration. So be sure to do that. If you've already submitted your application, and maybe during our meeting today, you realize something and you're now thinking, oh, that's not what I thought it was going to be. And I think we're better off staying at the brick and mortar school, then please go back to student enrollment and ask them to void your application so that you can stay at your brick and mortar setting. You've seen the classes, you've now seen it's reading. You're reading and you're self-teaching. And Mrs. Calhoun has talked immensely about that sense of organization and that sense of having to take ownership and that rapport that's required. It is a full school day. It is definitely high engagement, but there's a level of ownership that's with it too. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, yeah, I think we should stay at our brick and mortar, that's okay. Go back over to student enrollment, have them void out your application and stay. Maybe Leave Virtual is not the good fit right now, but maybe in a year from now it is, or maybe in 2 years from now it is. So just always keep that in mind as well. Also, if you're somebody who is like, I've done my application with student enrollment, I like what I see, we are going to send you orientation emails over the next few days. Monitor your email because we'll send you orientation invitations for you to RSVP. And as I already said, there's a bunch of them during the month of June and July, and you and your student can decide which one you want to attend. And that's where we'll help you. We'll dive deeper into Leave Virtual. We'll create the virtual account. We'll talk about activities. We'll talk about sports. We'll talk about course scheduling, all of the real nitty-gritty stuff of the day-to-days as a public school. But again, if there's anybody else has a question, please ask.
I do have one question.
Go for it.
Maybe a cluster. How often are we required to go into the education building in the year, would you say, other than the testing?
Well, there will definitely be in August for first days of school. So that's for sure. If your student is a high school student and has not yet passed some of their tests, then they'll be coming in the fall for more testing. But if they're an elementary or a middle school student, then you're looking at August, you're looking at again, probably in January, and then you're looking at during the month of April and or May, usually. Now, we'll be offering other engagement opportunities, meaning in-person supports, in-person training that will be ongoing, that we always want our kids to take advantage of. But the non-negotiables, August, January, and then for sure April, May-ish, depending upon the state's testing calendar.
All right. Now, what is I don't know. We bought a bus and built it out to turn into a traveling home. That was our whole point for going virtual. Would we probably be better off doing homeschool? Now, I've homeschooled my 6. These are grandbabies. And I'm just wondering if, God, what if we're like in Arizona and we have to come back here for something?
Right. And as a public school, you would need to come back.
Right.
As a homeschool family, you reserve the right to register as homeschool at any time.
Yeah, I know.
So
I
you
know
could
all those laws.
Yeah, you could always enroll with us and get started. And then if something actually came up where you
Happens.
realized it wasn't a good fit. If you love the platform, I can work with you to transition over to Florida Virtual Flex to finish it out as a homeschooler.
Sweet. So
Yeah.
the Florida virtual will allow me to travel more?
Well, that's because you're a homeschool student. And so you're no longer falling under public school guide. So you do what you want.
Okay, I didn't realize that they were homeschool. I thought they were considered public as well. Okay.
No, Florida Virtual Flex is homeschool.
All right, thank
Good
you.
question.
I'm done.
No problem. Anybody else?
I do. I have something to say to the parents who are sitting on the fence. Leave virtual is the best thing since sliced bread. So I know a lot. Listen, it's just that good. I mean, it sounds like a lot of stuff, but once you get those wheels to turn, it's simple, it's easy, it's what you make it, it's carefree. I can tell you that I get a chance more to be with my son. We get a chance to take adventures every day. We get a chance to do other things, as well as him learning and not missing anything. To all of the parents that are here now, like I said, I'm a service to the school. So I don't know. I hope that I will see you I will try to show up at the meetings at the school where you all can see me face to face. I don't mind exchanging numbers. I want to know what the school would say before I do that, because if it's any questions that you have for me as a parent, because I'm sitting on a different side of the fence as a school, so I can tell you the ins and outs of the hardships that it was for me when I first started. They do offer a lot of online extensive courses, Zooms. So you just have to be present. It's no such thing. Don't get there late. You're going to miss something. You're going to miss it. So, but I think that you all keep it recorded, correct? And they can go online and look back at it afterwards.
That's right.
But it's nothing like being in the present. Just like Miss Hope was asking the question, you want to speak to a live person. You don't want to have to go back and you can't ask the Zoom questions. You want to question now, because if this is going to be a decision that you're making, you want to kind of get upfront.
And to her point, we are a semester commitment. So if you enroll with us and you want to go back to your brick and mortar school, we're an entire semester. Obviously, if you go homeschool, you can do that at any time. But if your student gets in, 2 weeks with us and decides they don't like it, as a public school, we abide by the plan for student enrollment. So your student is with us at least through the first semester. So that's why, we hold the information session to start the conversation, come on in for orientation. And it's really, at that point, all the way up to the first day of school, quite frankly, you have the ability to change your mind. So we're glad that you're with us today. You're going to get the invite for orientation, and again, if something else comes up, contact us and we'll walk you through. The more information you have, the better decisions that you can make. So in closing and wrapping up, Mr. Metzner, Mrs. Guzman, Mrs. Calhoun, any final thoughts?
Happy learning.
All right. Well, thank you,
Happy
ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today. Again, over the next few days, you will get the email from us about orientation. But in the meantime, if you think of something, call us, email us. We'll give you info, but have a great afternoon. Bye.